It's been an honor serving with you all.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in Star Trek Picard's series finale, The Last Generation. So the Picard finale is so big, we probably should be talking about it like it's a Marvel movie or a Star Wars film.
So it's like Star Trek Endgame or like Rise of the Sky Crusher?
It is all of those things and more. Somehow, the Borg Queen returned, and the Enterprise D just became the sickest starship in the galaxy ever. Yes. Even before the episode starts, there is a great series of Easter eggs as both the Borg and the Next Generation nostalgia assimilate the Star Trek logo introduction. All season long, we've had the Titan warping around in this intro, but now it's the Enterprise D. We see a Borg Cube here, and the Star Trek logo gets Borgified. The music here ditches the boilerplate intro, and we get a much more ominous tone, including cues from Jerry Goldsmith's Borg themes from First Contact. And then the first voice we hear in the episode is Chekov.
This is President Anton Chekov of the United Federation of Planets, broadcasting on all emergency channels.
Wait, you mean the celebrated Russian author of such classics as The Cherry Tree? Was he assimilated by the Borg too? Is this the kind of show where Mark Twain showed up and Data's head got blown off?
No, dude, I'm talking about Chekov from Star Trek the original series.
But he'd be dead by now. This is like 110 years after we saw him in Generations.
That is true. Although the voice of the President of the United Federation of Planets is played by the one and only Walter Koenig, this unseen character is the son of Pavel Chekov from TOS and the classic films. The first name Anton could be a reference to the famous author, but more likely it's a reference to the late Anton Yelchin, who played Pavel Chekov in the reboot films. President Chekov's warning is overlaid with a spacescape taken directly from the opening sequence of The Next Generation when he says,
"Do not approach Earth."
Saying "do not approach Earth" and "save yourselves" references a similar speech from the President of the Federation in The Voyage Home when he said,
"Do not approach Earth. Save your energy. Save yourselves."
In crediting his father, President Chekov also references Spock when he says,
There are always possibilities.
a line from The Wrath of Khan, which Kirk mentioned after Spock died.
There are always possibilities, Spock said.
After Data explains that no other ships, Federation or otherwise, can come to assist Earth, we realize the Enterprise D is the last hope for all of Starfleet and probably for the galaxy. The Borg Cube is nested inside of Jupiter, and as the Enterprise heads to intercept, we see a very close-up flyby of the ship, which gives us a glimpse of 10 forward and the conference room behind the bridge. Now, this kind of detailed flyby of the Enterprise D was something we never ever saw in TNG. As everybody reels from the Borg just being parked inside the gases of Jupiter, Riker casually puts one of his feet up on the console, which he did all the time in The Next Generation. Picard has had it with all these motherfucking Borg on his motherfucking starships, and he says,
What began over 35 years ago ends tonight.
Hey, how come Picard says over 35 years ago? Why not just 35 years ago?
Okay, well, he probably says this because, for him, 35 years ago would have been when he was first assimilated in the Best of Both Worlds in 2366. But it's dicey to say when it actually first started because the Enterprise first encountered the Borg in Q-Who in 2365.
Oh, and don't forget, Seven was assimilated in 2350, but her parents started researching the Borg in 2340, so that's like over 60 years ago.
Yes, but also don't forget that Pavel Chekov helped Guinan out in Generations, and she was probably fleeing from the Borg at that point back in 2293, so that's over 108 years ago.
Oh yeah, and the Borg were in Enterprise, and they were there in First Contact Day, and that
Alright, Doug, that's enough. Let's move on. When we rejoin the Titan crew, Seven and Raffi have rigged the phasers to beam people up by firing at them. Now, this tech actually existed way back in the TNG episode Gambit, in which Picard went undercover as a mercenary and hung out with a wretched hive of scum and villainy who could also use their weapons to beam people and things up just by firing at them. After Worf makes an awkward reference to Menage a Trois,
And I will make it a threesome.
everybody argues about who should go on the away team to destroy the Borg beacon and save Jack. Data mentions that he should go because of his experience with the Borg, which is ironic because the last time Data faced the Borg, the Queen tried to give him real skin, which he now has anyways. After it's decided that the threesome of Picard, Riker, and Worf are going to go to the Borg ship, Picard leaves Geordi in command of the Enterprise D, saying,
Mr. LaForge, you have the bridge.
Hey, Data's the second officer of the Enterprise. He should be in command.
Not anymore. If you take a look at Data's uniform, he doesn't have a rank at all. This is because this new version of Data is basically a new person. Not to mention that at this point, Geordi is the highest ranking person there other than Picard. In episode 6, he was introduced as Commander LaForge. Now, back in TOS, Commodore Matthew Decker took control of the Enterprise because he outranked Spock, but he also outranked Kirk. Geordi taking command of the Enterprise D also references the season 1 episode The Arsenal of Freedom, when Geordi had to take command of the battle bridge. And speaking of rank shuffling, last episode, the computer identified Jean-Luc as captain, and he said,
I hereby accept the field demotion.
Now, Brian Silliman, a friend to the channel, pointed out that maybe this was Picard remembering Kirk's last advice to him.
Don't let them promote you. Don't let them transfer you. Don't let them do anything that takes you off the bridge of that ship, because while you're there, you can make a difference.
When Riker, Worf, and Picard board the Borg ship, we're hit with that Jerry Goldsmith Borg theme again. We get a lot of Borg canon connections and explanations about the current state of the collective in these scenes, starting with those little triangle things on the ceiling. In the Best of Both Worlds, we learned that these were distribution nodes, and back then, Shelby told us,
if we sting them in a tender spot, they might stop for a minute to scratch.
Picard refers to the unimatrix array, which refers to the concept of the Borg dividing parts of the hive into different unimatrices. This idea comes from Voyager, specifically the episodes Unimatrix Zero and Dark Frontier, in which we learned that Unimatrix 1 was the section of the Borg mostly devoted to the Queen, while Assimilated 7 was part of Unimatrix 1. Picard, Riker, and Worf all note that the Borg drones are dead, and their energy has been sapped to sustain something else. Later, the Borg Queen tells Picard outright that,
until recently there was no collective left.
This is a very relevant detail because it establishes that the Queen was nothing without the special DNA inside of Jack, which allowed her to hatch a comeback plan. When the Queen says,
"He found me at the very edge of space,"
what she means is that she was able to speak to Jack somewhat telepathically, which explains all the times Jack heard the words "find me" in his head.
Connect the branches. Find me.
The edge of space was likely somewhere in the Delta Quadrant before the Queen mustered up enough remaining energy to bring the Borg Cube to Jupiter. Picard intuits a lot of this a bit earlier when he says,
In the absence of one army, what else would they do but raise another?
As the Queen further explains what her whole deal is, she reiterates that she teamed up with the Changelings because they also hated Starfleet. There's an interesting parallel here between the accusations of genocide against Section 31 for what they did to the Changelings and what future Janeway did to the Borg, which makes this alliance feel perfectly natural.
So wait, this wasn't the Queen's plan like the entire time? If the Borg can now just assimilate people with this fancy DNA, why do they even need Jack? Or was it like Borg magic now?
Well, for those paying close enough attention, everything in these scenes with the Borg Queen makes it clear that the plan to use Jack's dormant DNA to create new drones was a kind of Hail Mary from the Borg, one which was only possible with the help of the Changelings. The Queen says,
Together, we've weaponized your biology.
The Borg Queen couldn't have known Jack Crusher was going to be born one day, meaning the special genetic code left in Picard's body was a sort of message in a bottle that happened to pan out for the Borg Queen, but was in no way her master plan from the start. Jean-Luc tries to get the Borg Queen to take him instead of Jack, which parallels First Contact, in which he tried to do the same thing to save Data.
Let Data go, and I will take my place at your side.
But now that he's fully assimilated, Jack is basically serving the same function Picard served in the Best of Both Worlds as Locutus. Jack's assimilated look is clearly similar to how Picard looked in the Best of Both Worlds, but it should be noted that the beefed up Borg armor on Jack and on some other drones that attack Riker and Worf is reminiscent of some formidable Borg armor seen in the 2012 Star Trek comic book miniseries Hive, which was co-written by Terry Matalas and Brandon Braga.
This is a very deep cut.
The Borg Queen tells Picard that he will
To witness your future's end.
This is one of her favorite things to say because in First Contact she said,
Watch your future's end.
Now meanwhile, on the Titan, Seven and Raffi notice that the Enterprise D is back in the game when its registry number pops up on a screen. So when Seven realizes what's going on, she says,
It's Picard. They're engaging the Borg.
This parallels Picard's chilling line from the Best of Both Worlds Part 1, when he said,
We have engaged the Borg.
And yes, like Lando in Return of the Jedi, Seven wants to buy the Enterprise a bunch of time and says to upload every prefix code we have. This references the idea of using a prefix code to lower another ship's shields, a concept which originates with the Wrath of Khan.
Reliance prefix number is 16309.
Because the Borg are using a line of sight to maintain some of their new collective, the Titan uses its cloaking device, though Raffi notes that they can't fire while cloaked. This is a small reference to the Undiscovered Country, in which everybody, including Scotty, emphatically reminded Spock that you can't fire while cloaked.
But a prey cannot fire when she's cloaked.
Over near the Cube, the Borg ship has started attacking the Enterprise, and Geordi orders Crusher to take out some of its turrets. He tells Crusher he's going to need her to do this manually, which leads Crusher to go into full beast mode as we see the Enterprise D kicking more ass than it's ever kicked before.
Locking phasers and returning fire.
However, because the beacon is located inside the center of the Cube, Geordi is worried that there's no way the ship can navigate quickly enough through the maze of Borgness to take it all out. Data insists that he can do the necessary calculations and begs the crew to trust him, and Geordi says,
We go with Data's gut.
This parallels a classic Trek idea from The Voyage Home, in which Spock is given full thruster control even though he has to guess at the exact calculations.
I will make a guess.
The Enterprise D goes full Return of the Jedi here as it weaves in and out of the inside of the Borg Cube, trying to get to its center.
Okay, so isn't this all that's just like the pretty much the Star Trek version of Return of the Jedi?
Dude, what do you mean? It's totally different.
I mean, you got a fleet of ships, they walk into a trap, the cube's like the Death Star, the Borg Queen kind of monologues like Emperor Palpatine, and to top it all off, a father and son are working out their differences in order to save the galaxy.
Yeah, man, but in this case, the father is saving the son from becoming one with the Borg.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
But that's what I love about this finale. It feels like it's touching on all of these movies and TV shows that we love, but it's reinventing them with a new voice that is uniquely Star Trek. So Picard jacks himself back into the collective, and we get footage from first contact of when he was assimilated by the Borg, which was a dreamlike flashback to the best of both worlds, which opened up that film. Picard tells Jack that even if Jack can't leave the collective, he'll stay with him because Jack has changed his life forever. Crusher has to fire the torpedoes right now or nobody will survive, and Riker asks Worf,
"Well, my friend, is this good enough?" "It is a fine day indeed to die with honor."
Worf saying today is a good day to die, or some variation of that, while fighting the Borg is a classic.
"Perhaps today is a good day to die."
Over comms, Riker calls Troy Imzadi again, the Betazoid word for beloved.
"Do you remember what I taught you, Imzadi?"
And alludes to their deceased son Thad when he says that he'll be waiting for Deanna because he and Worf are assuming they're going to die. However, Deanna's Betazoid powers kick in and she says that she knows where in the cube everyone is. Troy takes the helm, which is exactly what she did the last time everybody was on the Enterprise D in Generations.
"Deanna, take the helm! Get us out of orbit!"
Jack says the time of the Borg is over and he knows that he is never alone. Troy flies the Enterprise D right over Picard, Jack, and Worf and Riker. Everybody's beamed up as the Borg ship is destroyed. Worf decides to take a nap as everyone takes a break, and we see that Geordi's daughters and everyone else in Starfleet are totally de-Borged.
Hey, so now, you know, it's pretty much everybody in Starfleet under 25, they're all ex-Borg, right?
I never thought of it that way.
Yes, and 7 is their new queen.
High five. As Riker narrates a captain's log, we see a shot of the Enterprise D and the Titan, which is very similar to a reminiscent shot in the Undiscovered Country, in which the Excelsior and the Enterprise A were side by side. We're told Admiral Beverly Crusher is now in charge of Starfleet Medical, which could be a slight nod to Gates McFadden's absence in Season 2 of TNG, when she also worked at Starfleet Medical. Tuvok is alive as well, and he tells Seven that
the command crew of the USS Enterprise are receiving a full pardon for commandeering, better yet, hijacking, this very ship with your help.
This is a lot like the crew of the classic Enterprise getting similar charges against them dropped in the voyage home after they saved the day. Tuvok also has Seven's officer review recorded by Captain Shaw before the Titan set course for the Rhyton system. As many fans have known all along, Shaw actually did think that Seven was great and recommends that she gets promoted to captain.
I have a recommendation. Promotion to captain when we return to port.
As Tuvok gives Seven this news, we hear Jerry Goldsmith's Voyager theme playing because the book that Seven writes is going to be great.
So,
Raffi's family loves her again, and Worf talks about crying, but mentions that he has never wept. Now this is a slight inside joke to this line from the Undiscovered Country when Spock said,
"Hardly conclusive, Mr. Scott, since Klingons have no tear ducts."
Raffi and Worf hug, and she calls him Worf.
House of Martok.
A reference to General Martok from DS9. Meanwhile, Troy is giving Data a counseling session, rocking a blue outfit, which seems like a tribute to her famous blue dress on The Next Generation. Data talks about seeing an ensign feeding his cat and crying, and notes,
"Being human is just as difficult as the desire to be human."
Which basically brings Data's entire journey from The Next Generation full circle. If you cry seeing cats that look like Spot in real life, then this is really going to hit home.
Spot! I am very happy to see you, Spot.
We then flash forward to 1 year later and see the Enterprise D settling into a spot in the Fleet Museum as Dennis McCarthy's fanfare music from the film Generations plays.
It's right here.
How many times has she managed to save the world?
Riker, LaForge, and Picard muse about all the times the Enterprise has saved the world and talk about how their lives might have been different if they hadn't all been on the ship together. Riker says,
"Different, certainly. But certainly not better."
Hey, isn't that kind of a diss against Thomas Riker?
What do you mean, no?
Yeah, because like Thomas Riker didn't get to serve on the Enterprise and his life is like way worse.
Well, luckily the Maquis are no longer the enemy.
Oh, heck yeah, now both Rikers can have a trombone jam session together.
As we hear Majel Barrett's voice again, Riker says,
"I miss that voice."
A sweet reminder of all the work and life Majel Barrett put into Star Trek from day one. We hear the Generations music again, which was what was playing the last time Riker and Picard were on this bridge. Picard tells Geordi to take good care of her, and Geordi says,
"She's always taking good care of us."
This feels like a nice connection to the encounter at Farpoint when Data spoke to Admiral Bones McCoy, who said,
"But she's got the right name.
Now, you remember that, you hear? You treat her like a lady, and she'll always bring you home.
Now, like Return of the King, the Picard finale has at least 3 moments that feel like endings, and now we get the second, penultimate ending, as the Dockmaster voice of Terry Matalas once again welcomes people to the space dock.
Admiral Picard, Admiral Crusher, welcome to Space Dock.
In fact, it's interesting to end the episode with the showrunner welcoming us to the new Enterprise. The finale is clearly setting up a spin-off show called Star Trek Legacy, which I believe has not been picked up yet, if you can believe that. Now, if you would like to see this spin-off, go on whatever social media platform you use and hashtag Star Trek Legacy. Heck, shout it out the window if you have to. Let's make this show happen. Beverly, Jean-Luc, and Jack are on their way to Jack's new ship, and Beverly notes that Jack is on an accelerated track. That said, Jack is still an ensign, which makes his path not unlike that of his half-brother, Wesley Crusher, who also started serving on the Enterprise after very little formal training.
Wait, the Enterprise? No way!
That's right, Jack and Beverly reveal to Jean-Luc that the Titan has been rechristened the Enterprise. The registry is NCC 1701G.
Ah, Enterprise F, we hardly knew you.
Yeah, but there's plenty of letters left in the alphabet. The introduction of the Enterprise G might seem strange since the Titan is clearly smaller than the D. However, the Enterprise E had fewer decks than the D and also had a smaller crew. Also, the Enterprise A was exactly the same design as its predecessor, even though newer, bigger classes of ships were around at that time. Finally, the fact that the Titan is a Neo-Constitution class makes its design closer to the classic Enterprise anyways. As Shaw told us many times, the Titan is an exploratory vessel first, and it doesn't get more Enterprisey than that. Finally, the Titan is, of course, a pretty new ship, having been built from parts from the previous Luna-class Titans starting around the late 2390s. Now that we're seeing it roughly in 2402, it is safe to say that the Enterprise G, formerly the Titan A, is the most technologically advanced Enterprise to date. Jack jokes about setting a course for the Matalas system, a running gag this season about a terrible and dangerous star system first mentioned in the series Enterprise and named for Picard showrunner Terry Matalas when he was an assistant on that show.
I saw the ringed moons of Matalas Prime.
As Captain 7 of the Starship Enterprise prepares to take the ship out to warp, Raffi and Jack joke about what her catchphrase will be, even though she said engage a lot this season.
Engage.
Jack says it's like
writing the opening line to your legacy.
Now, we don't hear Seven's new catchphrase, so we'll really have to hope for that spinoff to find out what she said. Hashtag Star Trek Legacy. Meanwhile, we're back at the LA-10 Forward and with the Enterprise gang, and we learn that Crusher has drained the bar of Klingon blood wine. Crusher tells Worf to have another glass of prune juice, a reference to TNG's Yesterday Enterprise when Guinan got him into that drink.
Prune juice. Warrior's drink.
Worf says he has a lecture on Mugado meditation in the morning, which does not directly reference Will Ferrell's character from Zoolander, but rather the horned ape creature from the planet Neural, who famously wrestled with Kirk in the TOS classic A Private Little War. Data tries to give a toast by saying,
"Was a young lady from Venus,"
which references a dirty limerick that Data tried to recite to nobody's favorite TNG episode, The Naked Now.
There was a young lady from Venus whose body was shaped like a...
Captain to security, come in!
Thankfully, Picard gives the final toast, saying,
"And we must take the current where it serves, or lose our ventures."
Now, this quote comes from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, which means that Shakespearean-trained Sir Patrick Stewart gets to end Star Trek Picard with yet another Shakespeare performance.
And what he might say with irony, I say with conviction. What a piece of work is man.
And poker.
That's right. Picard pulls out the ace of spades and the crew all sit down to a poker game. Now, this references the final scene of All Good Things, in which Jean-Luc Picard joined the crew's poker game for the first time at the end of that series. As the crew has a laugh, Troy is drinking Romulan ale, Worf angrily folds, and Picard gets the last word, saying,
"I've come to believe that the stars have always been in my favor."
And then he wins the whole thing. Unlike the other episodes of this season, the credits play over a bird's eye shot of the crew continuing to play another hand of poker, just like in All Good Things. And then that's it.
But that's not it.
That's right, we cut to a scene of the Enterprise in front of a sun, which is similar to a previous shot from earlier in the season, which Terry Matalas has said was inspired by the opening shot of Transformers the movie in 1986. Jack places a little Enterprise D model in his quarters, and we hear those clock chimes from Star Trek VI.
Have we not heard the chimes at midnight?
And he even has a nice photo of his parents, which is clearly Gates McFadden and Patrick Stewart at some kind of formal event in the 1990s. And then, suddenly, we get Q! Jack busts out his personal phaser, and Q, as played by Jonathan Delancey, is rocking an outfit that has some Encounter at Farpoint vibes. Jack says that Q is supposed to be dead, referencing the events of Season 2, and Q says,
"And here I was hoping the next generation wouldn't think so linearly."
Now this is a roundabout reference to All Good Things, in which Picard and the crew saved humanity by not thinking linearly, but instead by deducing that a paradox was the key to their salvation. Q tells Jack that although Picard's trial is over, for this young Crusher, it's just beginning. And then it's over. Really, really over. And the absolute epic journey of Picard Season 3 has ended, which completes something that started over 35 years ago.
Or like 36.
A long time ago. So for Next Generation fans of all ages, this season has been something really special. A kind of Trek version of a Marvel movie for TV that gave us the best of the TNG cinematic moments, but in streaming form. It's totally a love letter to the fans, but it also clearly sets up a brand new show with a brand new Enterprise with Seven as our captain. Hashtag Star Trek Legacy. Will we get another new show about the Enterprise G though? Will we ever hear Seven's catchphrase? And is Q just messing around, or is Jack's future even more epic than his past? Nobody knows, but for now, the Next Generation just went out with a bold and beautiful ending. Hashtag Star Trek Legacy. And I just want to take a moment to thank a few people who have made it possible for us to cover this season.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
As a lot of you guys know, we were able to cover the first season of Picard, but we just didn't have the bandwidth to cover season 2. So these are the people who made this coverage possible. First, our writer Ryan Britt, who wrote the book on Star Trek, Set Phasers on Stun.
Thank you.
And especially to our editors, Harriet Lengel-Enright, Randolf Nombrado, and Brianna McLarty. Now these are the 3 people who worked on the bulk of the episodes of this series, but we have more people on our team like Colton Ogburn, Srinidhi Rao, and our interns Lee Mazzio and Rohel Mystery, and not to mention numerous freelancers who were able to cover those people so they were able to edit Picard. Thank you guys very much. And especially a big thanks to showrunner Terry Metalis and the cast and crew of this show. It has been an incredible ride. So what did you guys think of the episode? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.